You know that feeling when someone asks you what you wanted to be when you grew up, and you just kind of laugh it off? Not because you forgot, but because honestly, you never really got the chance to think about it. You were too busy being the responsible one, the strong one, the one who just figured things out. Maybe you were like Zeno, 8 years old, already knowing which bills were overdue, already knowing not to ask for too much, already reading the room like a grown adult before you even lost your first tooth. That's not a normal childhood. That's a child carrying weight that was never theirs to carry. And here's the thing nobody talks about. That weight doesn't just disappear when you turn 18. It follows you, quietly shaping who you are, how you love, and why rest still feels like something you have to earn. So let's talk about what actually happened. Because growing up too fast doesn't always look like what you see in movies. It's not always dramatic. It's not always obvious. Sometimes it looks like Zeno, a quiet kid sitting at the kitchen table, doing homework with one ear open, listening for the front door, already preparing for whatever mood was about to walk in. It could be as simple as knowing, at age 9, that you better not ask for new shoes this month, or being the one who kept the younger kids calm when things got loud, or learning to smile at family gatherings even when everything at home felt like it was falling apart. Psychologists have a word for this. They call it parentification. That's when a child starts taking on the emotional or physical responsibilities that should belong to the adults around them. But here's the thing about that word. It sounds clinical. It sounds distant. It doesn't even come close to describing what it actually feels like to be that child. It doesn't describe the moment you realize that nobody was coming to fix it, that you were the one who had to hold it together, that falling apart simply was not an option available to you. And here's what research actually tells us. Dr. Gregory Jerkovic, who has spent years studying this, found that children who are pushed into adult roles early don't just grow up faster, they wire differently. Their brains and nervous systems adapt to chronic stress as if it were just normal life, as if being on high alert was simply how things worked. So what felt totally normal to you, scanning the room, managing everyone's feelings, shrinking your own needs, that was actually your young mind doing everything it could just to survive. And the saddest part? You probably didn't even realize it was happening. It just felt like life. It just felt like your job. Here is where it gets interesting. Because kids like Zeno don't come out of those experiences empty-handed. Not at all. In fact, they come out with skills that most adults spend years trying to develop. You learned how to read a room in seconds. You could walk into any situation and immediately know who was upset, who was about to explode, and exactly what needed to happen to keep the peace. You became incredibly resourceful. You figured things out because you had to. You didn't have the luxury of giving up. You became the person people leaned on, the reliable one, the strong one, the one who always showed up, always had a plan, always kept it moving even when you were running on empty inside. But here's what nobody told you about those skills. They came with a price tag, and you've been paying that bill ever since, whether you knew it or not. Because those same survival tools that kept you safe as a kid, they don't just turn off when you become an adult. They keep running. In your relationships, you give and give and give, and receiving feels almost uncomfortable. Someone being genuinely kind to you can feel suspicious, like there must be a catch somewhere. You are drawn to people who need you. And I want you to hear this clearly. That is not a flaw. That is because being needed was the closest thing to love that felt safe and familiar back then. Needing felt dangerous. Being needed felt like solid ground. And then there's rest. Simple, ordinary rest. For most people, a slow Sunday morning feels like a gift. For you, it can feel like a threat. Like if you stop moving, if you stop being useful, everything will somehow unravel. So you stay busy. You stay needed. Because stillness still feels a little bit like falling. This is the part that doesn't get talked about enough. Because on the outside, people who grew up like Zeno look like they have it all together. And in a lot of ways, they do. They're the ones who handle the hard stuff without blinking. The ones their friends call in a crisis. The ones who just figure it out. But on the inside, there's this exhaustion that runs so deep that sleep doesn't even touch it. You wake up tired. You go through your day tired. Not because you're lazy, not because something is wrong with you, but because your nervous system has been working overtime since you were in elementary school. It never really got a chance to learn what safe and calm actually feel like. And then there's this quiet thing that happens with your sense of worth. You start to measure yourself by what you produce, by how much you do, by how useful you are to the people around you. And when you're not being useful, when you're just existing, just being, there's this uncomfortable voice in the back of your mind asking if that's really enough. The world doesn't help either. Society genuinely rewards people who grew up too fast. You're productive. You're dependable. You don't complain much. You get things done. People love that about you. But nobody stops to ask what it cost you. Nobody asks about the childhood version of you who just needed someone to say, "Hey, put that down. That's not yours to carry." And maybe the hardest part of all is this. You can be surrounded by people who love you, a full room, a full life, and still feel completely invisible. Not because they don't care, but because you became so good at holding everyone else up that nobody ever learned how to hold you. And somewhere along the way, you forgot that you were allowed to need that too. And that's the thing nobody prepares you for. Healing doesn't mean forgetting what you carried. It means finally putting it down. If you grew up like Zeno, always holding it together, always being the strong one, always making sure everyone else was okay, then hear this. You are allowed to be a beginner at receiving love. You are allowed to take up space without earning it first. You are allowed to rest without the guilt that follows right behind it. The child in you who handled so much, so young, did an incredible job. Truly. But that child deserves to finally exhale. Healing starts the moment you stop treating your own needs like an inconvenience. You don't have to figure this out alone anymore. And if this video felt like something you needed to hear today, please subscribe. There is so much more here for you.